Welcome to Hemp, Sister Nation, where you don't need a reservation. I said, Mama, the Lord stand with open arms. He'll warn you with a one more time. Yeah, one more time, baby. Welcome to the nation. I said, welcome to the nation.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Hempy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Gina, Mama Epps.
I'm Lolo Carter.
And together we are your favorite Hemp Sisters over at the Hemp Sisters Nation, where we pride ourselves on unconditional love,
We do.
support,
Yeah, that too.
education,
We're going to give it to you today as well.
take it, and just the love for humanity. You know, we really want to bring people together and teach about this plant. And with that being said, today's episode is a few different questions that we got from our LinkedIn family. I had done a video and asked for questions that Lo and I are going to answer one by one. So we're going to take the next few weeks and do this. We're going to answer all your hemptastic questions. And today we will start with Doreen.
Yeah. You do have quite the inquisitive audience.
I do, and I love that.
All of the right questions are being asked.
Yes.
It's really cool.
Doreen would like to know, does hemp or cannabis help to reduce migraines?
Yeah, so it's probably best to start at like what a migraine actually is.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I agree.
So if you're a sufferer, you need no introduction. Like us periodically.
Right.
But a migraine is a recurrent throbbing headache, and it typically affects one side of the head or the other. It's often accompanied by nausea and disturbed vision. You can have symptoms that would include, sensitivity to light, sound, smell, touch, again, nausea and vomiting, lightheadedness, pass out.
Torture.
It's torture. Depending, yeah. And, blurred vision is also accompanied with migraines. And it actually affects about 12% of people. It's very common, including children. And women, have higher occurrences of migraines than men.
Now, do you think that's because women have so much more on our plates?
Yes, we do. And our hormones are constantly serving us a delicious recipes.
Welcome to your 40s. You've never been ready for this.
Just put me in 10 years, Mom. One of the things that's unique about migraine sufferers, like unlike getting a headache, you actually most people get like sensory warning symptoms. Right. And these are called auras. So when you're constantly having migraines, you start to have these clues prior to the onset of the headache. And then that's actually something that's also runs in families as well. So
genetics.
Yeah, we're constantly at a fight, know it. Most treatments for migraines include a drug family of, they're called triptans. Secondary to that would be alkaloids. Triptans are more expensive in treatment, and your insurance company is going to cut that off. Alkaloids are the less expensive version, but they, don't work as well. They both primarily work by blocking the release of pro-inflammatory compounds in the brain. So this is what causes the pain of your migraine. It's the inflammation. Unfortunately, the side effects that come with these top two drug choices include rebound headaches, tightness, pain in the chest, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, overall body warmth, like a reaction through your body, redness, and then tingling under the skin.
Nothing like a headache to help your headache.
Thanks,
right. Big Pharma.
Right, just bring it down a notch so you can cope with it, right? And the tingling under the skin is really something that can be very annoying. Yeah, again, we look at risk reward, right? So this is where kind of cannabis comes into play, right? So when you're looking at where you get pain from migraine is inflammation. So while there's limited research about the mechanisms behind why cannabinoids alleviate migraines, anecdotal reports, show that it does. Right. So this kind of took researchers down a path when they were looking at diseases like migraines that don't really have a etiology, like they don't know where they are stem from. They know what the effect is, but the precursor events it's hard to track. So this developed the endocannabinoid deficiency theory. So migraines are shown in recent studies that abnormal inflammatory responses are the cause of this. Now, our endocannabinoid system exists within your body to maintain homeostasis, which is our balance.
So it exists in all of their bodies?
All of you. Now, even the pets that might be living around you are privileged to this master regulatory system.
How about that?
The more you know. Where's my little rainbow? So when you're tracking a migraine, it starts with a trigger event, right? Such as a bright light, hormones, we discussed that. Even some people, certain smells of foods can actually trigger an event. So what happens though?
We can relate to that being pregnant.
No, right.
Very,
right.
very similar.
100%.
Very, very similar.
100%.
Like your hormones will potentially destroy you. Anyway, carry on.
I know. Go there.
I know. Don't go.
So what happens is that this particular trigger event in somebody that's prone to migraines, it causes an imbalance in the brain, right? Which, when that happens, a normal functioning body should trigger the production of endocannabinoids that
which our bodies naturally produce.
Which our bodies naturally produce, okay. Correct. So we have, so that's supposed to happen. This actually will then create balance in the situation. Whatever the trigger event is causing, the negative reaction is now to bring balance through these particular systems. Now, when your body is deficient in the production of endocannabinoids, because endocannabinoids are made on demand, right? For these types of reasons. We need it now, we need it now.
Right.
So when your body's deficient of the quality and the production of endocannabinoids, this imbalance that's happening continues. So this is where the migraine develops, right? If it goes into a migraine headache. So the trigger now has gone into a migraine headache because it's not getting the endocannabinoids to hit the receptors to stop this process.
Pain.
And pain is the result of that, because inflammation, as we know, equals pain. So
that's in our entire body.
No, that's everywhere. Right? That is the natural response, inflammation, for any threat we have, whether it be immune or whatnot. It's our body's process. So that basically what happens in a migraine, it becomes out of control, right? And this is the resulting pain. So now studies that show that endocannabinoids, which are cannabinoids that we make ourselves, and then cannabinoids, which the term is kind of loosely, it should be phytocannabinoids if we're talking when we're talking about cannabinoid therapies, right? Phytocannabinoid. What those studies showed is that the receptors, that cannabinoids inhibited receptors that control these symptoms, the vomiting, the pain, and they actually work to block the symptoms from occurring. THC, which
my favorite,
it's the favorite, but it's also the most misunderstood cannabinoid because of
it's the root of all the propaganda on this plant. Right. This one cannabinoid is literally the root of the last 80 years of hell for us.
Right. Thousands of potential constituents to this plant, and we are divided over one or two,
right.
psychoactive components, which we'll kind of discuss. I mean, it's the level of THC really controls that type of experience. Right. So, but THC actually reduces serotonin release. So this is blocking pain, vomiting, nausea, and cannabinoids were found to bind to the area of the brain that modulates this pain transmission.
That's so cool.
No, it really is.
Science.
Right. Like you're right. The plant is replacing something your body makes to help you prevent these types of things. Beautiful, harmonic. So basically, the brain. So the cannabinoids bind to the area of the brain that is modulating the pain transmission, and this is kind of where we find where migraines are generated. Following another study, they had 3 cases that were reported of heavy like you, like a chronic, like a heavy user of cannabis, and them developing migraine attacks after they abruptly stopped using it.
Right.
So,
which people like to turn into an addiction.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, good point. That's not what happened, because in this study, they were basically showing that people that were on medications, that I mentioned, the triptans and alkaloid medications, when they also abruptly stopped, severe migraine attacks, continued.
Interesting.
This suggests that these rebound attacks after stopping a therapy that is helping you with your, cease or lessen migraines, that they're working on the same mechanisms of action, right? One has side effects, though, while taking, and one does not. They also looked at genetic factors within these case studies that allow for increased inflammation. So some people are genetically prone to have increased inflammation, and that particular those genes were present in migraine patients over the control subjects in the group as well.
Super interesting.
Right. No, so continuing to tie inflammation is
the root of all evil. Honestly.
Endocannabinoid presence, all of, in this study, they were decreased in patients that had medication, that like over-the-counter medications that people were using for headaches, basically suggesting that endocannabinoid dysfunction was actually involved with the migraine condition. That's really interesting.
Very, very.
We did talk about Dr. Russo briefly, but that this actually, like migraines, fibromyalgia, IBS, these are all inflammatory response, conditions, diseases that at the heart of that is endocannabinoid deficiency, so it's really interesting. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years to treat headaches.
Thousands of years. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, like
not last week.
Squared.
Not once the world started to catch on.
No. Medical cannabis patients find less nausea and they have better sleep. They also report less frequency and less severity of their migraine headaches when they use cannabis. And knowing that the triggers for migraines are things like sleep deprivation, anxiety, and stress. Cannabis works to relieve those events, right? So when you have...
that's a trifecta of why I use this plant.
So if you relieve the causes, the triggers of your migraines with cannabis, what does that mean in the end? You don't create the environment where migraine can actually form. Right. And that's where cannabis is super unique, because we're kind of...
You can be proactive. Stop it before it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And unique to the fact that all our medications that we have are to treat symptoms, right? Which address the root cause.
Right.
When you learn about the conditions and things you're facing, where cannabis can actually get to the root portion of that, where your disease starts and why your disease starts.
Right.
I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Incredible.
So there's no question during the cannabis helps cease and even lessen severity of migraines, especially if you take it when you have on the onset of the pain. Regular use of low-dose products that have THC significantly reduce severity of headaches. We talk about that because, in legal hemp products, a full spectrum product will have a legal amount of THC.
Right.
That number and that amount is decided based on, it's not going to get you high in the traditional sense, right? But it's going to get you, healthy?
It's going to get you healthy.
Get you healthy.
Healthy, not high.
Healthy, not high.
There it is.
And again, you can use either high THC or even just regular CBD products that have a full spectrum of cannabinoids, and they have not been depleted of the natural constituents of the plant. And you would do that if you have a headache that comes. You would want a rapid onset of delivery, and the best way to do that would be like through inhalation, Second to that would be sublingual.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I'm someone that suffers from chronic pain. And like Lo just said, when you are in intense pain, you don't necessarily want to wait an hour plus for a sublingual tincture to kick in. So you're going to use a quick little, a couple hits, smoke a little bit. You might dab once or twice. You might use a vape pen, because then you're getting the immediate effects. But then once, you get a little bit of that relief, then your tincture kicks in, and now you're where you're supposed to be. And that pain is gone, the inflammation is gone, and you've stopped what could have ruined your entire day, if not two.
Right. I think we have to also cannabis, acute pain and chronic pain are two very different things.
Right.
We have some really magical things to help us with acute pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm in a car accident, you're gonna need to get it's an immediate, it's a very stressful event, right?
Right.
There's medications that are there to do that. When you are talking to people about chronic pain, opiates and things are not the answer. They can't be, because the long-term effect of these things is
detrimental.
Right. That's right. It's more mortality.
Right.
So it's really important to start really, especially with long-term sufferers in getting them into other methods.
Yes.
Because cannabis is about helping the body help itself.
Well said.
And other things are just trying to get you through these events and things, but they come with their own risks and rewards. So
absolutely. So Doreen, I hope we answered your question about cannabis and migraines. They absolutely 100% cannabis will help you your migraine, and we hope you'll reach out to us. We can recommend a starting point for you. Let's have a conversation, and let's see if we can get this plant into your life and help you get a little relief naturally.
Yeah, that's its number one side effect, really, for things you didn't even know you had wrong with you.
Right.
Wonderful. Okay.
Well, that was a great question. All right. Keisha would like to know, are there any risks or precautions that people should be aware of?
It's like our gut wants to tell you no, but there are some. When we talk about like risks, we kind of go to that whole like prescription drug definition of risks. But
right, just what people are used to.
Yeah, it's the terminology that we're indoctrinated to.
Right.
Yes, this drug will A, B, and C to your heart and your liver and your kidneys, and no such findings with cannabis, right? However, it's not uncommon for over-counter drugs and prescription drugs to interact with other compounds.
Sure.
And cannabis is where we can find some precautions, right? So prescription medications have interactions with lots of things like caffeine, certain foods, grapefruit will make some medications not even work in your body. Alcohol is a huge influencing factor, If you're a person that's ingesting CBD oil, cannabis oil, it's important to be aware of some potential interactions that you'll have with prescription drugs. So again, not what you're used to hearing as far as a precaution or interaction. It's really comes down to that cannabinoids, cannabinoid therapies influence how, it's part of your metabolism, right? So including your medication. So certain cannabinoids like CBD, for instance, can interact with prescriptions. It's not common, not totally common, right? But generally occur when it's used at higher doses of CBD oil. And any interactions are relatively mild. One of the interactions that CBD can have with prescription drugs is inhibiting the enzyme system of your human cytochrome P450. It's fancy talk, but liver. The P450 system is an enzyme family that's found in the liver, and it's involved with metabolizing over 60% of medications that you're going to take. So it's important because doctors determine how they dose you on your prescription medications based on processing times within this particular system.
Right.
They make calculations for your heart medication based on it, you know, or other very important system medications. You know, how long the amount of time that it's going to take for the medication to work and be processed through the P450 system. So if only one drug is being ingested, the P450 system, and it's healthy, then averages can provide accurate dosing. Certain substances or an unhealthy enzyme P450 system is really going to affect how the drugs you're taking are processed, and they're going to metabolize slower or faster in some cases than they would do on their own. So researchers have found that through clinical trials, CBD inhibits certain enzymes within the system. And that affects the way your body processes certain drugs that are made to be metabolized through the P450 system. So CBD essentially inhibits that enzyme, making the medications that you're taking for this, if they work on this particular system, they metabolize slower or faster.
I have an actual, like a little personal story about this.
Yeah.
You know, less than 2 years ago, I had a surgery, a pretty large surgery on my hip. I had a huge tumor removed, and I had all these pre-tests to make sure I was, you know, healthy enough to go into surgery. And my blood work came back, and my liver enzymes were through the roof compared to the doctor. Now, we consulted our doctor on our team, and he's like, that's because you're using cannabis. That's not even remotely a red flag. So I go back to the doctor, try to explain to him that, you know, I use a bucket load of cannabis a day and my liver's just processing it like I'm good. Let's get into surgery. Puts off my surgery. Finally, you know, after a million more tests, decides because I stopped cannabis for a day. Was it one day? One day I didn't use cannabis. Came back the next day. My enzymes were all the way down. He's like, all right, you can have surgery. You've cured yourself. Like, absolutely insane.
I think actually we even armed you with a research paper on that.
He would not look at it. He would.
I mean, it was like from his peers. Like it wasn't like I made that or no.
So anyway.
Yeah, which that brings us to being honest with your doctor. But, you know, there are certain drugs, you know, that you should not take with CBD, especially CBD, but certain steroids, calcium channel blockers, antihistamines, immune modulators, benzos, antibiotics, anesthetics, antipsychotics,
anti-beta
blockers. You know, really the studies show that higher doses of CBD have more of a chance of making certain medications not metabolize as your doctor wants them to. But it's a good start knowing if you're taking a medication that might hit that list, and then bringing us to this full circle about no reason to hide legal products from your doctor, you know, and even illegal ones, right? Again, like you're on a, you know, your health practitioner is supposed to be on a team for your health. And transparency, no matter sometimes uncomfortable, is really key to you having successful anything.
100%.
You know, so when you're supplementing with anything, they want to know, are you taking vitamins? Are you taking mineral supplements? What are you taking? Because anything that they do, they have to consider these things.
Right. And what are you taking and what's it doing for you? Because I'll always tell them I use cannabis, and they'll ask me, like, what's it doing for you? Less pain, I'm more active, less inflammation. You know what I mean? I'll go on and on, but they write it down. Now, whether they do anything with that information, I don't know.
Well, and
it's important to share.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, and it's funny you say that they're writing it down. I mean, they haven't had a lot of it training on this stuff. So I think it's interesting to see them collecting their own anecdotal evidence, you know, drawing interest. You know, if 5 people came in saying the same things, maybe that's influencing a doctor to learn about something and outside of their comfort zone. So talk to your doctor if you're on any specifically, you know, especially if you're on prescription medications, you know, about using any amount of cannabinoids, but especially if you're really diving into heavy doses. Yes.
So Keisha, we hope we helped you a little bit on the risks. We'll use that term loosely, but the precautions, because it is important. It is important. So again, please reach out to us. Please, let's have a conversation. If you're thinking about starting just a daily supplement just for your, you know, overall health, let's have a conversation and let's try and bring this plant into your life. Thank you so much for the question. Appreciated it. Alrighty, guys. Last question, and this comes from Robert B. and Philip H. And Robert Philip would like to know, what is the biggest health benefit for who and why?
A loaded one.
That is a loaded one. Do either one of you have a spine by chance? No?
This is the first requirement for cannabis working for you. It is found in all vertebrates, the endocannabinoid system. And that is the key reason why hemp cannabis helps support your health.
All of your health.
All of your health. Maybe best to just kind of quickly review some of the components. Because again, this could be we have a 287-page training about this. So
something tells me you don't want to.
Let's break this down into a 5-minute segment, yeah? But understanding the difference between, okay, so you have the endocannabinoid system, and within there are neurotransmitters and receptors. Neurotransmitters being endocannabinoids. And an endocannabinoid is a compound that our bodies make all by itself.
Naturally.
We produce them, and it's for one simple reason, to bind to cannabinoid receptors within our endocannabinoid system.
In our body.
In our body.
In our body.
They're the glitter. So what does that mean, right? So the endocannabinoid system is a regulatory system. It's actually a master regulatory system. We have, what's one of the regulatory systems? Like you have
your nervous system.
You have a nervous system. You have your respiratory system.
Right.
ECS, the endocannabinoid system, is the parent of all of these systems. Yes. Its job is to use endocannabinoids and their receptors, which are CB1 and CB2 receptors mainly, to communicate, to bring balance, and we call it homeostasis, to
balance.
Homeostasis, right. So this is basically everything from regulating your body temperature to controlling inflammation, your immune system functions and responses, your neurological functions and responses. All of these are using endocannabinoids and cannabinoids to make it all work. Now, phytocannabinoid, we're going to call it a cannabinoid, but its true term is a phytocannabinoid. When you receive a cannabinoid from a plant, it is a phytocannabinoid. And this is what one of the major mechanisms within cannabis that actually work with this system and work with the receptors that your endocannabinoids can actually match with. There's atypical receptors as well, and that's for another day. There are other receptors, valenoid receptors, etc., that actually work with the system to control different functions. But phytocannabinoids, that's where you get from cannabis, and over 80% of identified cannabinoids are actually exclusive to cannabis plant. Yeah.
That sounds like we need them in our body.
That one's pretty, that's the controversial plant. There's actually cannabinoids you can find in like cacao, right? So they're in the things that we eat anyway from the plant world. However, okay, so how the system works is it has to be engaged, right? Your body has to be making quality endocannabinoids, and the receptors equally have to be able to receive the messages and communicate these functions. A highly engaged endocannabinoid system is truly key to achieving homeostasis, and the endocannabinoids that we make are responsible for keeping it busy.
Well said.
Right. So one of the shortcomings of endocannabinoids, though, is that when we make them on demand, and they last at receptor sites for a very short time. Things can influence that. If you're high in stress, and your body is continuously making endocannabinoids to hit the receptors to bring you out of stress state, the fact that they are short-term on the receptor site means you're not getting the longer-term relief for that. And now you're over-stressed out. You're overworking that system. And it's not, your body can't produce what it needs to keep these receptors plugged, right? So this actually in turn creates insufficient activity within the receptors of your body that are supposed to be maintaining homeostasis, and your body begins to deregulate, and you start to fall further and further from homeostasis or balance. The less receptor site activity over longer periods of time, and then now you start to have more delicate internal balances start to fail. And this is where you're going to start to see results that are primarily mental and physical challenges, and where illness can develop. There's one prominent cannabis researcher, not one, but one that is really responsible. His name is Dr. Ethan Russo.
He really brought it all to light.
Yeah, he brought it out of the light. His studies, he proposed a theory of somebody being clinically endocannabinoid deficient. He found supporting evidence that people that were diagnosed with certain conditions, they had lower levels of endocannabinoids. This was a common denominator for these people that were suffering these conditions.
What kind of conditions?
And his studies, it's fibromyalgia, migraines, IBS, certain fertility issues.
I can't imagine what percent of the planet deals with those conditions. It's got to be through the roof.
Right. Those also have in commonality that there's no defined etiology, right? We treat symptoms, right? We know that these are inflammatory. Inflammation is at the highlight of most of these diseases. Inflammation is at the very foundation of every process that we have, basically. And it's also, inflammation is at the base of every disease on this planet. That's a fact. So in his studies, he looked at this and he said basically from his research that, okay, I'm going to tie this together. If you're deficient in endocannabinoids or the production, those processes, or in the production of cannabinoid receptors, this is why when you're supplementing with cannabis that they're getting proof of effect of alleviating some of these conditions. And that is marvelous research, and most research today continues off the back of that when we're looking at the endocannabinoid system. Lots to dive into there, but in general, Robert and Philip, the biggest health benefit, cannabis can bring to you is supporting your endocannabinoid system, optimizing your health through supporting your endocannabinoid system. It's more delicate than we think, right? It's affected by diet. All of these neurotransmitters, like 85% of the neurotransmitters for the system are created in your gut. And knowing that your diet is a huge component to your ability to achieve homeostasis, right?
Very good. So that's our why, and we already talked about our who is literally every man, woman, child, and any animal with a spine. We all have this system, and we have to make sure it's working for us and not against us. So a huge thank you to Robert, Philip, Keisha, Doreen. Thank you guys so much for these questions. They're incredible talking points. Please reach out to us. We would love to help any of you, recommend anything, have a conversation. Let's get this plant in your life. Tell a friend, tell a loved one, and let's keep the education flowing.
Yeah, send us your questions. What's on your mind?
Yeah, let's talk, guys.
Challenge us.
Yes. So whether you are watching us or listening to us, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining the Hemp Sisters on the Hempy Hour, and we will see you all next week.
One love.
One love.
Welcome to the nation. I said, welcome.